In this section we will work on the porch railings, and the pieces that we need are listed here under Porches under medium weight chipboard, and it's this section here, and there are 4 pieces that are 3/8 inch by 12, and there are 2 pieces that are 7/16 inch by 12, and then some larger pieces that we'll use for the front porch on the second floor. So that's our chipboard that we need. And we'll need a little bit of decorative paper to cover the top part of the railings. And then there's a template, and it's called Porch Railings. Now, don't get discouraged by all these measurements. I just tried to be as thorough as possible, and we'll just work on these one at a time. So, and I've printed out a second copy so that as I work on these, I'll be able to lay them on that second copy and keep everything straight as we go along. So let's get started. So I'm going to start this by first making the railings, and then after I've cut all the railings, then I'll cut the tops. So I've taken my 2 top pieces that are a little bit wider, and I've just put them aside so I don't get confused and use the wrong piece. So let's start by looking at the side porch, and when we're doing that, make sure when we're working on the railings that you're looking at this section that just says railings, not the one down here that said tops. And this says we're going to cut 4 of this shape and use the 3/8 inch wide strips. And to start with, we're ignoring the red pluses. Those are going to be used to punch holes later, but we don't need them to start with. So to cut this, we're going to measure 3 3/13, so that's a 1/16 more than 3/4 on the bottom, and then on the top 3 7/16, which is a 1/16 less than a 1/2 inch. And I have these 2 tick marks made, so I'll just connect those and cut that off. And I'll do 3 more like that so that I'll have a total of 4. So here are my 4 side porch railings, and I'm just going to put them in their spot on my other copy here. Now we'll move up to the back porch railings, this section here on the left, and we're going to cut only 2 of each this time. And so I'll start here with my scrap that I have left over, and for the long one I'm going to measure 3 inches on the bottom and then 2 13/16 on the top. And if you notice, this time I'm measuring over from the left side. Before we were measuring over from the right side. This helps us make sure we get all of our pieces oriented correctly. And then once I've made my 2 tick marks, I can go ahead and join those and then cut that off. And I'll repeat that process for the other pieces that I have here. Make sure I only need to make 2 of each one. And especially when you're cutting these small pieces, it's really important to have a good sharp blade in your craft knife. So I'll go ahead and complete the cutting for these back porch railings. So now I have these pieces cut, and I'll put them in place on my other sheet. Now we're looking up here at the front porch railings, and there's one that we can cut out of the 3/8 inch strip, and that's this one right here, and we need two of them, but we'll mark the bottom 6 inches long and the top 5 5/8, and then connect to make that cut. So make 2 of these. Bottom is 6 inches, top is 5 5/8. So there are the 2 front porch railings like that. I almost forgot about this little guy over here. We need 2 pieces of the 3/8. Again, this is another front porch railing, and they're both cut 1 1/8 inch long. So now we have all of our railings that can be cut out of the strips, and we just are left with this L-shaped piece for the front porch railing. And so I'm going to just turn one over here, and I'm going to mark in a line that is 3/8 inch from the left side, a vertical line. And then I'm flip it so that I'm working on the bottom now, and I need a longer ruler. And I'll mark 3/8 of an inch along this bottom line, bottom edge. And then from the corner here, from this corner, we'll measure over 5 5/8. And we'll connect that dot with the corner to create this angle, and then we can cut out this shape. And I'll do that a second time. So we measured in 3/8 on the left, up 3/8 on the bottom, and drew those lines, and then from this intersection here measured over the 5 5/8 that it says in the template. So here's my piece cut, and I'll repeat that process on my second shape. Now that we've completed all of the main railings, we can work on the tops. So I've brought in my 2 7/16 inch wide strip and my 1 rectangle that is for the top second floor. So now we'll start again down here with the side porch, and we're looking at the part that says tops. So first we will measure out and cut a strip that is the length here that is on the bottom, which is 3 13/16. So just cut a rectangle that is 3 13/16 inch long. And once you have your 3 13/16 inch rectangle, then measure in 3 7/16, and this one we're measuring in from the right side. So 3 7/16, the 16th less than a half. And then you see on the template where it shows this 1/16 inch, and it's kind of a little straight thing there. So we don't want to just connect our line that we made down to the corner. We want to stop short about a 1/16 of an inch. So you can just, if you need to, take a ruler and measure that, or else just make a little tick mark up a 1/16 of an inch there, and then connect those dots. So you're getting kind of a chopped off corner on these railings. So hopefully you can see how we just have a little chopped off corner there on the end of that strip. And I'll repeat that process to make the second one, first cutting my 3 13/16 inch rectangle, then measuring 3 7/16 on the top, coming up my 1/16 inch, and then making the cut. Now we'll work on the back porch railing tops. They're in this section over here. We only need 1 of each of these shapes. So let's start with the largest one here. Its bottom measurement is 3 inches, so I'll cut my strip to 3 inches. Once I have my 3-inch strip, I'll measure 2 13/16 across on the top. And I'm measuring from the left now. 13/16 is a 1/16 more than 3/4. This is a very slight angle on these on the back porch. And then we'll mark our little 1/16 inch up from the bottom right there, and then connect those dots. And remember, we only need one each of the tops for the back porch railings. Now for this shape over here, we start out with a 1-inch long rectangle, so I'll cut that. And once I have my 1-inch long rectangle, I'll measure over 13/16 on the top, and then come up my little 1/16 of an inch on this right side, connect those dots, and cut that off. And then finally, for this last little piece, we just simply need a little rectangle that is 13/16 inches long. So now I have my back porch tops cut, and I'll put these over on my other sheet. And now we'll look here at our front porch tops. We have 2 pieces that get cut out of this strip that we have, and we'll again start by cutting the rectangle here, which is 6 inches long. And once we have our 6-inch long rectangle, we can measure 5 5/8 across on the top and make that tick mark, and then measure up a 1/16 of an inch on the bottom here on the right and connect our dots. And we only need one of those. Our other little strip piece to be cut out of the 7/16 is 1 1/8 inches long. So there are the 2 front porch railing tops that are cut out of the 7/16 inch strip. And I'll just put these aside on my other sheet. And now finally we have the L-shaped piece to cut. We only need one of these. And we'll start by measuring in 7/16 on the left side. And 7/16 is a 1/16 short of a 1/2 inch. And then we can measure 7/16 inches in on the bottom edge. Once we have these 2 lines drawn in our template, it says to measure 5 5/8 from this intersection to create a point over here. Once I've made that point, I'll again make a little mark up a 1/16 of an inch from the bottom here on the right, connect those dots to make the slant, and then cut out the rest of that L shape. So here are all the pieces for our railings, and I'm going to take a moment and just on the tops, I'm going to put what top it's for and the word top, and that way I'll know that that's the side that's going to get paper on it, and I can move them off if I need to work on the bottoms of the railings. So I marked all my top pieces and set them aside so that we can just focus on the railings right now. And our next step is to prep for punching the holes for I think they're called balusters. So we want to take some temporary adhesive and put each of these railings together in sets of 2. Now if you have any markings that you can still see, it doesn't matter for the one we're going to put on the top, but the bottom one, go ahead and erase anything or take the cleanest one that you have and put that on the bottom, and then just take a little temporary adhesive and get them put together exactly. So I'll do that for all of my railings. Now once you have them put together in sets of 2, go ahead and write what they are on the top of them. You can just write side and back and front, because the next thing we want to do is take our template here and cut out these pieces directly on the lines, because we'll take them and then adhere them with temporary adhesive to the tops. Now here for the side, you can either reuse it, or you can, if you were like me and you had a second piece of this to use to lay out your pieces on, you can just use that second one to cut the holes, since we've got 2 different ones to do for the sides. So go ahead and cut these out, and then use some temporary adhesive to adhere them to the tops of your pieces. So now we'll use the small hole on our crocodile, the 1/8 inch hole, to punch all of these holes, and it's big enough to go through the double layer of chipboard. And I just have a scrap piece of 3/8 here that I have drawn a line down the center, and I want to just get my crocodile set here so that when I punch a hole, I know it's going on the center line, so that all I have to worry about is lining it up with each one of this direction as I move along. And you'll want to periodically check that this has not shifted as you're moving things in there. And then I would still punch all of the holes from the front side or whichever side, just so they're all in alignment in case it's off a little bit. Truly it won't show, but we'll go ahead and punch all of the holes, but don't take anything apart yet. So once you finish punching your holes, take the paper off carefully, and then if you can get your finger in between the 2 pieces of chipboard, your thumbnail or something, to get it started. Otherwise, use the back of your craft knife. Be careful, because you don't want to delaminate these, but they should come apart. Now keep them together, and I'm just rubbing to remove any of the temporary adhesive, but I want to make sure I keep them in the order that I punched them. So I've got some clothespins here so that I can just keep them together. So I'll do that for all of my railings. And once you have your pieces put together in their sets of 2, just check and make sure that you can still see enough of the writing, and if not, go ahead and enhance it so you know which porch is which. And something else that can help you is that for the pieces with slants, the front, you can see the angle that it's going here, and the back, that angle goes this way, but for the side, the angle is on the other side, and the longer side is always the front of the porch. Now to cut all my little 1-inch pieces of dowel, 1/8 inch dowel, I'm actually using wood skewers. I used my little X-Acto miter box, and I doubled up some medium weight chipboard and stuck it to the back here to make a stop, so that when I stick my piece of dowel or skewer in here, it'll bump right up against that stop there, and then I can cut every single piece exactly the same length. So now I'm ready to assemble one of my railings, and I'm just going to pick this back one to start with. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm keeping these 2 pieces together just like I punched them, but they're not stuck together. And I'm just going to thread some of my little dowels through here so that those pieces are sitting in the middle. And I'll continue that with the rest of the holes. And now that I have dowels in each one of my holes, I'm just going to spread those middle two pieces apart a little bit. And once I get them apart a little bit, I'll just put it on my table standing upright so that I can kind of get all the ends of the dowels in alignment, so that I have something about like that. And then I'll take my little glue, and I'm only going to work on one end at a time, and I'll put a little glue on each one of the ends, just right at the end, and I'll flip it over and just put glue on the same end on the other side. And then I can just push that railing so it hits my work surface, and I'll do it on both sides. And I'll make sure all of these balusters are all the way down. I'll flip this up, and everything should be nice and smooth down there. And I'll just let that set up on that side until it's dry, and once it's dry we can do the other side. So I like to just kind of work in series. I'll put this one aside, then work on another one, and probably do all the bottoms first and then come back and do the top pieces. So that's how the little railings go together. When you glue on the second side, before you set it aside to dry, just put it on your gridded mat and make sure that it is all nice and square and that everything looks good before it sets up to dry. Now I'm ready to put decorative paper on the tops of all the on the railing tops, and where we wrote the word top, that's the side that we'll attach paper to, and I'm just going to use this paper to do those tops. So I'll go ahead and put prep score tape where it says top, and then I will attach it to those pieces and then cut it out matching the shape. And when you're doing all your prepping and cutting, don't lose track of this little 1/16 inch of flatness that's on the end of each one of these pieces. So now I have all of my railing units laid out with their associated railing top. I've made sure I have everything oriented the correct way. Remember that fronts, the slant comes down like this. Side, the fronts come down like that. And here on the back, the little rectangular one goes on the left, and the slants come down with a similar angle to what we had on the front. So when we put the tops on here, it is similar to what we did when we built the porches themselves, and that is that we have some overhang in the front. The only difference is here on this front porch, the edges, there is no overhang down on this end down here on the one that is just straight. All of the left edge, the back edge, and the slanty edge all are flush, and only in the front do we have an overhang. And I'm going to put these on with glue, which allows me a little wiggle room to get everything positioned correctly. So I think I'll do them one at a time and tell you anything special about them. So this one, flush left, flush back, flush slant, overhang in the front. On this small one, it's flush left, flush back, and flush right. It's only overhanging on the front. On this one, This short end is flush, the whole inside of the L is flush, and the slanty edge is flush. So we're only overhanging on this left edge and the front edge. On the two side railings, it's flush on the left slanted, flush on the back, and flush on the right, and only overhangs on the front long edge. On this little one, it's flush on the left and flush on the back, and overhangs on the right and the front. On this little one, it's flush on the slanty on the right and the back. It overhangs on the left and on the front. And on this last back one, it's flush on the left, flush on the back, and flush on the right. It only overhangs in the front. Now, to make the front porch column, we need these last few things that are listed under Porches. There are 4 pieces that are 1/4 inch by 3 3/16, and then some smaller pieces here that are all 1 1/16, and 2 that are 3/8 inch wide, and 2 that are 1/4 inch wide. And then I just have a little scrap of paper to cover the column with. So we'll start out by gluing the 4 long strips together and just match up their edges as best you can. And we should end up with a layer that is about 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Now, your chipboard may not be exactly a 1/16 of an inch. Mine is just slightly less. So I'm going to take my little pieces here and I'm going to center them on the side where I see my 4 edges, and I'm going to just put them down near one end and make sure it's aligned at the bottom. And then I'll flip it around to the other side where I see the 4 edges and put the other piece on that's 1/4 inch and center that. And then I'll add some glue on the opposite sides here and put my 3/8 inch pieces on. So then you should end up with a column that looks like this. Now I'll take my piece of decorative paper and put it just on the top part of this column and measure for height. And I'll cut a piece that is 1 1/4 inches wide by that height. And then from my leftover paper here, I'll cut a piece that is 1 1/16 inches high, because that's the height of our base part here. And then I want to wrap around here. That would be 1.5 inches plus 3/8, so 1 7/8 inch long. So 1 1/16 by 1 7/8. And then for the long, tall one, we'll score at every 1/4 of an inch. And the short one will score at 3/8 of an inch. Then I've creased my papers on the score marks, and I'll do a little inking. So I've inked my pieces, and I've also prepped just the beginning and the end of each one with score tape. And then I can wrap the column, wrap the top part and the bottom part, and the only thing you want to do is make sure that whichever one you start with, that the seam for the other one is on facing the same way. So here's my little column that goes on the front porch. Now we're ready to put our railings and porches together, and I've laid them out. So my second floor is up here on the top. It has the thinner porches, and the thing to notice here is that on the front porch, the L-shaped goes on the second level, and on the back porch, the one that is continuous goes on the second level. On the side porch, the railings are the same no matter what floor it is. And then on the first level, on the front porch, we have our two straight pieces, plus we'll also put the column in the corner. And then side was the same, and then here on the front, we're going to create a little opening for the back steps to come in. So let's start with something pretty straightforward. We'll start with the side porch and its railing. And the railings are sized so that the bottom part of the railing should fit exactly on the front part of the porch. It lines up on all three edges. So we'll just put some wet glue on there and hold it in place for a moment. Be careful, make sure all your edges are lining up correctly. So once you've glued it, you should have a little unit that looks like this. And we can repeat that for its second level. And then also for the second level on the back porch, this fits exactly on there. And for the second level on the front porch, that L-shaped has been sized to exactly fit on the top of the porch there. So I'll go ahead and get all of those glued up. Now we can work on our two special cases. On the back porch, the little rectangular one gets glued right to the left edge, and the overhanging part faces the opening, and then the one on the right gets glued with the slant matched up here so that we get a little opening here in the middle to allow for the steps. So here on the front porch on the first floor, our little side unit with the overhang facing out will glue in here. Then our column with the seams kind of, I'm going to put mine facing towards the back, goes here in the corner, and then this piece will fit here. Now I would say put in the this little side piece first, and the front piece. You're probably going to have to squeeze on the column a little bit, because when we put the paper on, it might be just a little bit bigger than 3/8, and so you may end up with a little bit of an overhang there, but try to squeeze it in and get it to fit into that corner. And then before your glue sets up, put it down on your gridded mat and make sure that the column is coming up straight this way, and also put it this way and make sure that it is straight that way as well, and then allow that unit to dry. Now we'll put in our porches starting on the back, and they should fit right inside these spaces, and you can reach in from the bottom here to give it a little squeeze if you need to. And I'll put this one in with the building in the upright position, and then you can also put a little dab of glue on the railings if it looks like they will meet over there. Now it's not necessary really to glue the railings in, so if they're not meeting exactly, you don't have to worry about that. And then I'll work in this position to put the top porch in, and it should fit go right underneath the doors where our 4.5-inch line is, and then we have drawn a 4.5-inch line on the other two sides there, and so we'll be able to get that in and glue that in. And I'll make sure it's straight. I'm just not looking at it properly right now. So I'll glue these two porches in, and I'll let it set up and dry probably for a half an hour or so before I move on to the next two porches. So when the back porches have set up and dried, we can put our two side porches in. Again, the top one, the top edge of the porch floor lines up with that 4.5 mark, and then the bottom porch, of course, just fits in and right in between, flush on the ground. And I'll again put the bottom floor porch in with the building standing upright, and put my towel down and put the second level porch in with it on its side. Now before we put the front porch on, we'll use our little 2x2 spacer box inside of our interior box here to make sure that we're keeping these walls square. So I have my little 2x2 box in there, and now I can add my bottom front porch on. And it's going to, I'll glue this in the upright position and get this one installed first and make sure it's set up before we move to install the second one. And it just fits right along there and nestles into that corner back here. Now before we put our second story porch on, I forgot one little step when we made the column, and that's to cut a little 1/4-inch square of black chipboard and put that right on the top. It kind of makes a little ending part for it there. So just go ahead and put that on and let it set up for a minute before we go to put the second story porch on. So when we put the second story on, the top of this post here is going to come right into the corner of our porch, and then of course we'll use our 4.5-inch lines that we drew before on the building, and I put some just post-it flags here just to help me find them because they're kind of light pencil and sometimes I can't see them. So put that on and hold it with some good pressure and allow that to thoroughly dry.